Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about the firing of Taylor Lorenz, one of the most despised individuals within mainstream news media, and a title that has been very well earned. For those who don't know, Taylor Lorenz has a nasty reputation of doxing people that she does not like and then showing up to their houses. One of her most famous victims, for example, being none other than Libs of TikTok, an individual who became famous for reposting leftist videos of their own political positions, oftentimes unedited, I might add. Clearly, this was such outrageous and evil behavior on the part of Libs of TikTok that Taylor Lorenz felt compelled to give out Libs of TikTok's real name, as well as her home address, and then even went so far as to show up to the homes of her relatives. Given the extremely violent nature of far leftists these days, it is fairly self-evident as to why Taylor Lorenz would wish to give out Libs of TikTok's real name and home address to the general public. So clearly it's that sort of behavior that ultimately got her fired, right? Wrong. Not only was she able to keep her job over that, but she also got a fair amount of protection to the tune of archival websites refusing to archive things that she has said, just to highlight another example of the incestuous nature of the relationship between the far left and the establishment. In other words, not only was she not fired for what she had done there, but she was actively defended to the tune of getting special treatment that would of course never be provided to someone that wasn't in bed with the establishment. So if that wasn't enough to get her fired, what was? Well, it turns out that she was being investigated starting in August over a single Instagram post where she implied that President Joe Biden was a war criminal, something that she, for the record, tried to later deny ever implying, even though multiple witnesses have come forth to confirm that she did in fact imply it, and was in fact trying to lie to cover up her behavior. But the big takeaway here is that this is apparently the horrific crime that requires months of investigation, resulting in the firing of said journalist, daring to criticize a sitting US president. A fairly harsh criticism, mind you, though a criticism I would argue that isn't exactly outside of the realm of reason, but still at the end of the day she got fired, or let go, for daring to criticize a member of the establishment who just so happened to be the sitting president of the United States. And this is apparently a far, far worse thing to do than provide the real name and home address of an ordinary person, as well as show up to the homes of their relatives, all because you politically disagree with them. In the eyes of the establishment, criticizing the president is far, far worse than that. So yes, this whole situation is yet another example of the establishment being extremely corrupt and shady. There were many valid reasons for which Taylor Lorenz could have and should have been fired, but criticizing the sitting president of the United States is not one of them. On principle, I do not support the reason that Taylor Lorenz got fired. I do think there are valid reasons for which she should have been fired, but the reason they picked, like I said, is not one of them. Were there any actual integrity within the mainstream news media, she would not have been part of it shortly after doxing someone's home address and then showing up to the homes of their relatives as a glorified intimidation tactic, all being disguised as being part of just a news article, bro. There is one additional bit of irony that I do need to bring up with this whole situation though, that being the reaction of Taylor Lorenz herself to all of this recent news about her no longer working at the Washington Post. Because at this point, you could legitimately watch a movie off the surface of the moon through the sheer amount of projection on display. In one example, Taylor Lorenz said on October the 2nd, quote, "The best thing about being independent is being able to call out bitch-ass little media reporters on their garbage. These people straight up knowingly print lies, participate in smear campaigns, especially against women, and kiss the worst rich people's asses." Keep in mind, this is coming from someone who directly doxed and wrote hit piece articles against an ordinary woman that she did not like, all the while working at a position where not kissing the ass of creepy Uncle Joe is apparently a fireable offense. Taylor Lorenz is describing herself herself to a T with this tweet. Another example of her accidentally describing herself comes from this thread from October the 3rd, where she states, quote, "Nothing has blackpilled me more on the mainstream media than seeing how many journalists knowingly print lies and falsehoods in order to cozy up to power. It's disgusting. Then they want to lecture content creators about ethics. Keep in mind, this is Taylor Lorenz who said this, a journalist who knowingly printed lies and falsehoods to cozy up to power, to the tune that she was getting protected by archival websites. And she was the one trying to lecture everyone else about ethics." Amusingly, despite being so fervently against corruption in journalism and being so knowledgeable on the subject apparently, she decided to walk back her statements a bit by following up by stating, quote, "Not a single tech reporter I've ever worked with or know has ever done anything like this, by the way, but I've seen media reporters, politics reporters, and more do it so brazenly. I'm eternally grateful for the internet because I can't imagine how much worse it was before social media." For Taylor Lorenz to be speaking the truth here, she would have to clearly not know herself, given that Taylor Lorenz is a person that has become the gold standard for doing all of these things. Though I will agree that the internet has made it far, far easier to combat the corruption we see in modern mainstream media today. Taylor Lorenz has gained such a nasty reputation, specifically through her own actions, but also specifically because we've been able to expose her actions. And yes, while this was apparently not a fireable offense as far as the Washington Post was concerned, their protection of her did significantly further tarnish their own reputation as a news media outlet. And it further demonstrated the outright disgust and hatred that mainstream news media outlets, as well as the establishment in general at this point, have toward the ordinary man, as well as how far they were at the time willing to go to defend the far left. That was, of course, until the far left decided to start seriously criticizing things that the establishment has decreed to be above criticism. And ultimately, like I said, the great tool to take the narrative monopoly away from the establishment, that great resource has ultimately been the internet. It is one of the greatest tools in human history for combating corruption. It is a triumph of individual rights. And despite the warts and all nature of it, I ultimately have to conclude that overall, it has made the world a far, far better place. Now, for those curious, I will of course be providing links in the description below to the Taylor Lorenz tweets so you can check them out for yourself if you should so desire. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.